Welcome to Negotiating Happiness, the show that helps you find happiness, success, and balance in your work and life. I'm Adriana, your host for this journey into entrepreneurship and personal growth. We're broadcasting live on 107.7 and 105.3 FM in New Orleans as part of the United Public Radio Network. We explore the latest strategies, insights, and stories from successful entrepreneurs and experts. From managing stress to building a thriving business, we've got you covered. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Adriana at Negotiating Happiness. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Welcome. This is a beautiful Monday. Well, at least we had a beautiful weekend, but I'm not quite sure if it's a beautiful Monday now. But anyways, I am here with my friend and fellow professional, Jenn Hudder from Honeyflow Coaching. Hi, Jenn.
Hi.
How's it going?
Oh my gosh, it's a good start to the week, right? To connect and do this, it's an amazing start to the week.
That's right. So how about I do a quick intro of what we're going to be doing. And I just wanted to let you guys know that Jenn is my first official guest, and I'm super thankful for Jenn for being here and for giving us her time.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yes. She's a longtime entrepreneur with a wealth of experience in business triumphs, hard knocks, and pivots along her journey. Jenn knows firsthand what it takes to overcome fear and take action to achieve success. She understands how daunting it can be to face hurdles in business and how that fear can ultimately stagnate growth, holding you back from achieving your deepest desires. So if you guys are ready to learn from Jenn's experience and gain valuable insights into managing a coaching business, achieving success, balancing life as a mom, and finding happiness along the way, then you won't want to miss this. And don't worry, guys, if you can't tune in, we will be streaming everywhere as per usual, and we will be providing the links as well. So, Jenn, again, thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So what did you do this weekend?
I went to the Jays game. So yeah, as a family, we went and took in the Blue Jays game on Saturday, and it was like warm and sunny and wonderful, and they won. So it was it was a good day. I feel like as my kids get older, those days are kind of like fewer and further in between. So soaking it up.
Yeah. That's awesome. Shout out to any baseball fans. I should mention that Jenn is also in Ontario, Canada. I know that we stream live in New Orleans, but our audience is all over the world, which is so cool. Yeah. And it's so funny. So you were in Ontario, and this weekend, I was in the States.
Oh, really?
I went to Syracuse. I went to see a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert. So shout out to the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
What?
They killed it. Yeah, they killed it. It was amazing.
I didn't know they were still touring.
They've had like 2 new albums in the last couple of years.
What? Apparently I'm living under a rock.
No, I bet you've heard them on the radio. You're just not actively figuring out that it's the Chili Peppers. It's amazing.
Perhaps. That's amazing. Yeah.
There's
nothing like music. It's like after the whole pandemic thing and not having that, we took in a small show in a local club here a few weeks ago, and when we left, I was just like, oh, you forget what the energy is like in that shared space. There's nothing replaces it.
No, and it was wonderful. It was in Syracuse at the university. The university is beautiful, and it was thousands of people. I actually didn't have time to look it up, but from experience, it looked like, I don't know, maybe 30,000 people. It was wild. Oh, we've got here somebody on LinkedIn saying hello from Los Angeles.
Beautiful.
Oh, and somebody from India. Hello, friends. We are so glad that you can tune in from everywhere around the world. Awesome. So, Jenn, tell us something fun or quirky about yourself.
Fun and quirky. I think as an adult, especially as a mom, like it's actually hard to think about things that are fun because like, oh, anything that I would consider to about myself to be fun are probably related to my kids. Shoot, what did I do before that? Um, so,
You were a person, remember?
right, right. Especially you're a
Right.
relatively new mom, so I'm sure you
Yeah.
can appreciate that as well. Fun and quirky. I grew up in a tiny little town. My parents owned the only gas station slash restaurant slash convenience store in the town. So for
Mm.
anybody familiar with the show Corner Gas, that's kind of how I explain it. It's like a little Canadian gem of a show, but it's this idea of this tiny town and kind of all the happenings that happen
That's amazing.
in the town. And yeah, like, so we grew up there, we lived there in the actual, like, the building was our house as well. So um we were kind of like, you couldn't do anything wrong because you knew everybody was stopping by the next day, and like there was no hiding anything that maybe your teenager mind would want to do. So yeah, yeah. So that's a little something about me. But yeah, my grade school had like 70 kids from like kindergarten right up through grade 8. So yeah, it was a tiny town.
Wow, that's amazing. And you live where now?
We are located just outside of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So yeah,
Huge
we came
city.
here, I guess, 2005. So going on 20 years, which is bonkers. But yeah, I had this realization growing up the way I did. But as my kids started to get older, I was like, wow, I'm raising city kids. That's
Hmm.
weird because I was such a country kid, right? So yeah,
Right.
parenting them is like, oh, I should probably think about this.
Right. Right. It's like a whole other ball game, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. We I always feel the need to explain to people that, oh, I'm like, oh, an hour away from Toronto, Canada, Ontario, but really I'm in Rockwood and it's probably more than an hour away, and I'm
Right.
in like this little new development, but it's in a small town, right? So I'm kind of went away. I used to live in Kitchener before that.
Right.
And then Ottawa, the capital. I was like, no, we're
Hmm.
having kids, so we're moving away from that. That's so funny how life works, right?
Yeah, and just growing up in that fashion, how it like it builds the character that you are, and I love that. Like, I my husband is also from where I grew up. We met in high school, so we kind of
Oh,
have this shared story of like what it was like to grow up there, and kind of, the simpleness and things you'd be like, oh, I'd never let my kids do that. I'm like, but it was okay because everybody knew everybody, and yeah.
exactly. Exactly. That's so sweet. You never hear that anymore, right? It's all about like the Tinder and Bumble stories these days.
Yes. Yes. Ours was a story of our lockers were landed right beside each other. And first day of grade 9, and
Oh,
same
wow.
homeroom. And then, yeah, grade 10, I think we started dating. And a gajillion years later, here we are.
That's so sweet. Okay, well, so fast forward, you're in the entrepreneur world. What made you decide to become a business coach? How did you get started?
Mm. Well, I was an entrepreneur for like 14 years before deciding to get into business coaching. So it was really that, I guess, that led, or it felt like a natural progression. So a bit of a backstory is when my first son was born, 3 months after he was born, I was like, yeah, I think if I'm going to start a business and be an entrepreneur, now is probably a really great time to do that. I can see that now probably was more of like a coping mechanism than it actually was like, oh, yes, this is totally a great idea. But, I was young and blissfully ignorant, and yeah, why not? Right. So we started that business. I had a 3-month old. That kid almost he will turn 16 in a few weeks. So
Wow.
there's the time frame. But I was really young. I was a young mom. I was a young woman. And all of a sudden I was, trying to break into the business world, network, all of that good stuff, and build a business. And as much it was wonderful, it was also really hard because I'm like, oh, I can't do a 7 a.m. breakfast meeting like all of or most of my male counterparts can. So
Right.
I felt like I was kind of being left out of things by default because I was wearing the hat of being a mother as well. And so, yeah, I grew that business over 13 years. And honestly, it was great until it wasn't great. And I didn't actually know it wasn't great. But one morning, I was working from home that day. I just had this moment of, I was like, I'm done with this business. Where did all the joy go? Like, I was looking around for it. Like, I just lost everything for that business. So, like,
Wow.
there's a long story in there of how it played out. But within 6 weeks, I had sold that business and had exited it, which was terrific for me because in that moment of realization that, like, I'm done, it was like a disease. I'm like, I have to get rid of it right now. I need to move on. But I was kind of in this middle ground of like, well, what am I going to do when I grow up, per se? I was knocking on the door of 40. Um, it was through that reflection that I was like, well, what did I like about the business? And well, I loved building the business. I loved building a team. I loved sales components. I loved growing myself in that identity. Um,
Yeah.
my business partner and I were, worked in an agency before. So we were in our functional roles. So we're like, well, yeah, we can do that. And all of a sudden we had staff, and I was promoted into the role of CEO. So it was like a whole other realm of learning this new role. And so when I was transferring out of that business, I was like, that was the part I loved. And how could I help other women do that maybe a little easier than I did, or not second guess themselves as much as I
Yeah.
did at 27, trying to juggle all of those roles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, well, what is that job? It's a
Right.
business coach.
Right.
So that was kind of this natural progression into entering the world of coaching. And I just knew I really wanted to work with women because of what the differences I experienced going through and walking that path by myself.
Right. But can we just stop for a moment and just like give you the credit and the props? You were a mom, you had a family, you were a CEO, and you were aware enough to understand that while there are ebbs and flows in business, that maybe your happiness changed, right? Because I kind of wanted to
Yeah.
bring this to everyone's attention with this show about how whatever you want that you're working towards, and that's what you categorize as your happiness, it could change, right? Like once you get there,
Yeah.
it will change. Or maybe one day you wake up and you're like, I don't want this anymore, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
But can we just
Yes.
acknowledge that you got there and you made it
Yeah.
happen and you were happy at one point, right? It's not
Totally.
it's not just about like the money of business
No,
or the
it's
success
about
or
building something, right? And for
yeah,
me, I knew that the story of that business wasn't over. My story within that business was coming to an end. And that gave me comfort, and the way it played out in that I didn't, have to shut it down. I didn't any of that stuff. So it was like this kind of fairy tale ending and gave me what I needed, but it allowed it to continue with an injection of new energy and fresh eyes. And like, it's exactly what that business needed as well. So,
yeah. And see, we have a comment here, and it goes back um, to kind of what you mentioned. It says,
yeah.
I'm a mentor for a STEM team. It is difficult since my colleagues are all male and it can be hard to connect with them sometimes. For
Yeah.
sure, for sure. And there's
Mhm.
this mentality that, people do business on the golf course. They don't do
Yes.
business in, your 9 to 5 meetings. And you're
Right.
right, as a mom or even female in general or a parent, maybe you are a male parent,
Yeah,
but
for
you
sure.
can't make those commitments. How do you connect with people in order to do business, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's obviously it changed over the last several years with everybody having to kind of go virtual. And there was actually wonderful things about that, but I remember feeling so frustrated to say like whoever made up these rules and kind of created the structure around how, we do business, quote unquote, was
Mhm.
definitely not living the same life that I was living. Whether it was, a lot of families at that time probably had one stay-at-home parent and could make that work. That was much more normal at that point, or yeah, common, I guess. Um, but that wasn't our reality. And my husband's a
Right.
trades guy, so he leaves at like 5 in the morning, So there was no chance for me to get to a 7 a.m. breakfast meeting. Like I'm like, hey, that it's actually
Yeah.
illegal to leave my children here. So that's sorry, I can't participate in your meeting. Um,
Yeah.
but you know what that did is it created resentment. And sometimes we don't even know that resentment's building within us in our businesses. But that for me was one of those pieces that would feel prickly. I'm like, oh, I'm either like upset that I can't take advantage of this opportunity because I've these duties at home, or sadly I can feel kind of resentful that I have to be at home, right? Like it felt like it was a
Yeah.
no-win situation. But I was like,
Yeah.
someone's got to change the playbook here. It's not working.
So would you say that in the last little while, especially after COVID, things have changed?
Yeah, I think that COVID was obviously terrible, but it also did a lot of really cool things, especially for women, and that it well first of all it opened up platforms like this, right? Platforms for us,
Mhm.
networking platforms with some of my clients of like, you would never be able to, from our perspective where we're located, like get to a networking event in Ottawa. So that would be
Yeah.
like a 6 hour drive from us. But
Yeah.
because everything went virtual, you can all of a sudden network with people that are across the province or across the state or across the country. That's an opportunity.
Mhm.
And how can we start to reframe these things? The
Yeah.
other thing was that everybody landed at home for the most part. My husband continued to work out of the house, being a trades guy, and
Yeah.
thank goodness that was probably the
Yeah.
best thing. But a lot of families ended up both being home, and so there was this, like, I don't know, visibility, I think, on the extra role that oftentimes the mom or the woman in the family would just pick up for and the slack for and
Yeah.
do.
And I want to be fair and I want to acknowledge maybe the other group of women who are on the other end of this. I think we are very lucky that we were in a situation where we could become entrepreneurs. There are women around,
Yes.
North America, the world, where they did not have that opportunity. And I can easily see how they got buried even further under all
For
of these
sure.
other duties. Like it was most likely the moms staying home and doing homeschooling, or the grandmothers, right? or
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
or maybe or parents in general, they just kind of had to figure everything else out. So we do realize that we are speaking from a very unique perspective, and COVID
Absolutely.
was terrible for a lot of people, and it made it so that the home became your 24-hour space. It no longer
Yeah,
was
talk about,
your
yeah, blurring lines, right? And
right.
even before that and after, quote unquote, I guess, if we're considering this to be after, but creating physical boundaries is like something a lot of women that I work with struggle, especially if their offices are based in their homes, because they're like, oh, it's like I'm always just in it. I'm either I can see the dishes in kind of my peripheral vision as I'm trying to do work,
Yeah.
or after I can't really get into like family mode because I know I can see the lingering things on my to-do list. And it's
Right.
difficult.
Okay. Yeah. And so I bet you help a lot of female entrepreneurs that were kind of in that spot. So tell me a little bit about who your clients are.
Yeah. So as I said, when I moved into the coaching space, I just knew I wanted to work with women that were in somewhere in the journey of building a business. So I work with women that are like, hey, I think I might want to do this, to women that are 20 plus years in business. And I love every stage of it. And I can tell
Mhm.
you that, and hopefully this gives some people some comfort in that no matter where you are in the stage of your business, we often struggle with the same things, no matter where we are. And you're
Yeah.
not alone. And it's perfectly normal to have some of the fears or imposter syndrome or challenges, all that we all experience. And allowing yourself a support system like a coach or a mentor or a networking or a mastermind group, it can kind of take some of the prickly fear out of those situations and allow you to take action even quicker in your business.
Right. Right. I mean, you could be looking at the most successful businesses in the world, and you will see that their top people all have coaches, they have
Yeah.
mentors, they have, strict regimens for a reason, in order to maintain that the calm, right? Because we all
Right.
know that our heads could just be filled with
Sure.
worry and tasks and whatnot. So you I speak from experience. It's hard to follow my own advice, right, when I give advice to my clients. But what about you, Jen? What makes you happy, and how do you make sure that you stay in balance?
Balance. It's such an interesting word, isn't it? And I
Mhm.
think for me, and I kind of told you the backstory of like how I found myself in a place of not happy at one point, and it was giving myself the permission to completely break it and start again that led me to this beautiful place that I have found. And I would call it more of like ebb and flow around it than I don't know if we ever achieve balance per se, but I think that there is this formula that
Mhm.
each one of us should look at intentionally creating that serves our life. So my um, motto in my work is always that I help women build businesses that serve their best life instead of their life serving their business.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get caught up in that and we lose, the lines blur as we said, and we're feeling like we're only serving one or the other. But for me, it was about reverse engineering it. So when I decided to move into the coaching space and open up a business there, I stopped and I said, okay, what have I learned over the past 13 years? What worked and what didn't work? And what is the life that I want to live? And how does this new business fit into that? So for me, it was choosing to actually work from home instead. I had an office that my business operated out of for the 13 years, but I knew that the feeling of driving into the driveway at like 6 at night, like honking the horn for my kids to get in, like the stress level was high. I was running like, the hamster on the wheel. It just didn't feel good. I wanted to be home. I wanted to have flexibility in my days and autonomy over my time. I wanted to be there for my kids. As I said, they're getting older, and those times I think are like it's a closing window, right? Whether we like it or
Mhm.
not. And I wanted to take some stress off of my husband in terms of scheduling and feeling like he needed to be, share because he's amazing that way. He always wanted to make sure we were equal in terms of like getting the kids somewhere or doing this or groceries or whatever. But by reverse engineering it through my business, I was able to be like, hey, I've got the flexibility to do this. Don't worry about it. I got it. And I don't feel any resentment about it.
Mhm.
I wanted to work from home. I wanted to have space to go out for a walk in the middle of the day because that is like really important to my mental health to get some sun and fresh air and movement. So I build that into my schedule. I work 4 days a week. So Mondays are like my home day. I do, the laundry and the grocery shopping and whatever else needs to get done. So it's kind of a slow start to the week. And oftentimes I work on my business as well, but it makes me feel like I'm caught up and then can
Right.
fully focus with my clients for the remainder of the week. So understanding a lot about myself has enabled me to build a business that serves me and my clients even better.
Right. And there's a lot of research coming out now about, the 4-day week being put into place and how beneficial it has been for
Mhm.
sales, for optimizing your time that you're in office and the time that you actually get to spend away refreshing, relaxing, resting.
Yeah.
I was super happy. I was scrolling on LinkedIn, and my previous background is legal, as I'm
Mhm.
sure I've said many times. It's it's a very fast-paced, stressful industry to work in. So the fact that I saw an article where these big law firms are making such drastic changes in a profession that has, been around for so long, and it's been very much the same, um, you know, with office culture, with the hierarchy, the things that can make it great, but can also really tear down some, you know, some certain people that maybe are not at the top. made me so happy to see, it's like, what, this can be done. We can work
Yes.
4 days a week, even in the most stressful situations. And I'm really hoping that other companies take note that even these types of very traditional, professional, businesses are taking note, and they're seeing the value. And, they were reporting higher loyalty from their staff.
Oh, wow.
Law firms are notorious for having a revolving
Sure.
door with support staff, right? So this just made my heart happy, but I'm really glad that you mentioned that you have a 4-day week. I am working towards implementing that myself, but it is a challenge sometimes, but you have to
Yeah.
weigh it out, like you said.
Well, and it's about challenging the status quo. And I often encourage my clients to do that because we just have these like wired in ideas of how things need to be done. And I was like, well, why? It's a
Hmm.
powerful question, right? Like, why do we need to do it that way? Well, if
Hmm.
I don't work 5 days a week and that like this said something about my work ethic, and I'm like, but why? Is it about results? Is it about service? And if you can do that in 4 days,
Yeah.
what's the problem with that? And and oftentimes people are caught off guard because they're like, oh, uh, I don't know.
Because we were told that we needed to work 40 hours a week in order to be productive members of society. You're
Yes,
exactly right, Jen. Like, you got it right on the nail. This was done with the assumption, first of all, the working idea was never made for women first. It was made for
right.
men, for the breadwinners. So
Sure.
yes, at one point, working 40 hours a week, you were able to sustain an entire family. We've unfortunately moved away from that, with the
Yes.
way that we consume, with the way that our needs have changed over time. And now we have, you know, two incomes, if possible, in order to have a bit more comfortable life, right? But we didn't really change that idea. So the idea was that you were working 40 hours a week while you had somebody else taking over all of the domestic work, because it is
Right.
work. It's work.
Yeah, and
It's
you would
not a
come home to
holiday.
dinner ready for you.
Right.
Like, so
Right.
in my past life, it was like walk in the door at 6, and then I'm like, okay, what are we? So then I have to just move right into like, getting dinner ready for my family. And then when my kids were small, we all know that there's like a whole other routine that kicks in, and it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wasn't like I wasn't showing up for my kids. Like I wasn't being the best mom I could be. I wasn't definitely being the best partner to my husband. And then it just felt like it was like Groundhog Day. We just kept doing it over and over and over again, and you kind of lose sense of even who you are in that mix.
Right. And we're having these conversations, and all that goes through my head is like, wow, I can relate so much. So if anybody listening, if you can relate, let us know in the comments, or
Yeah.
send us a message or something to be like, you're not crazy. We relate. We're in that spot, right? So Jen, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you,
Yeah.
would we be able to redirect them to your website?
Yeah, for sure. So my website, is it okay if I
Yeah, go
drop it?
ahead,
Yeah.
please.
So my website is honeyflowcoaching.com. And then my socials are pretty much all the same as well. So Instagram, Facebook, it's all Honeyflow Coaching. And then my email, because I love email. Maybe that makes me sound old. It's possible, but I love the direct connection with people. It just let's take it off. Let's connect in a different way. But my email is Jenn with 2 N's at honeyflowcoaching.com, and I
And
welcome
don't
emails.
Yeah, and don't worry, guys. We've posted the links for Jen in our summaries. So if you're catching this later, just make sure you go to the description and you'll see some of the links there. Um, my next part of the show, I was going to ask you, what are your services? Like, how do people find you? What works best for you in business? And also, what do you offer clients? I'm just going to do a quick station ID because we're almost halfway through. So, for anyone that's just tuning in, welcome, guys. I hope you've grabbed your lunch, your coffee, and are listening to us. This is Negotiating Happiness with Adriana Fiorestro. I'm your host. And just a reminder, we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. If you guys are catching us later, just a reminder, if you do want to catch us live, we are airing on Mondays at 12 in New Orleans at noon and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are here with Jenn Hudder from Honeyflow Coaching. We're just about to dive into, what Jenn does, why she does it, and how come she does it so well. We want to know everything. Okay?
All of it.
All of it. I want to know all of it. I want to learn everything. Just before we keep going, I wanted to point out something because it took me a really long time to learn from this, but you were just finishing telling us how you had a previous business and it didn't work out it worked out for a long time, but now you're in another business. And while most of us would be so bummed out about, we put in so much time and effort and it didn't work out, and people would see that as a failure. But look at where that brings people, right? And it's all about mindset. Our last episode, we talked a lot about having a positive mindset and not just saying that, but I tried to go through examples, right? So a positive mindset for this would be, this didn't work out, but it brought me so much along the way. Where can I take it from now? Instead of, oh my God, I'm focusing on this did not work out, right? You kind of have to accept it happened and see what you can make of it.
And that's exactly what you did. Yeah, and it took a while, like for sure it took a while, but I was able to give that first business purpose and empathy, because I knew that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if I hadn't have gone on that journey. So one journey led me to the next. It wasn't a failure. It was just the stepping stone to get where I am today. And by framing it out that way, I was like, right, okay, so I would do anything to get where I am today because I love what I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It definitely reframed it for me, because it's tricky, right? To be like, oh, does this mean I failed? Did I do something wrong? That's not really healthy for anybody, is it?
No, for sure. And we talked about the law of attraction, right? The universe says, whatever you focus on, that's what I'm going to give you. So try and move the focus away. Have the pity party, but at some point that's going to have to end. So let's say you're looking at different types of clients. You said that you work with anybody from, beginning to end kind of thing. Yeah. So what kind of services would somebody find when they look you up?
Good question. For me, it was about enabling support for an entrepreneur to be as accessible as possible. It was like my number one goal, because I remember starting the business, 27 years old, literally $1 in that bank account. And we're like, okay, well, let's do it, right? So bringing on a coach wasn't really realistic, even though that's when I probably would have benefited from it the most. But it wasn't until like year 7 or 8, I think, that I brought on my first business coach. So for me, the goal is to make it accessible. And that's how I've determined my service offerings. So whether it's like some on-demand workshops, or I have a pocket coaching service, which allows women to sign up, and instead of doing one-on-one sessions, like live sessions, they have full text, voice note message access to me anytime. And what I love about that is, especially for moms and women in business, we know that the mind doesn't really stop, at the 5 o'clock bell. It happens anytime. So I'll often get a message like at 9 or 10, 11 o'clock at night. Hey, Jen, I was just thinking about this, or I'm trying to get through this and I'm meeting some resistance, whatever it is. And usually by the next morning, I don't want to admit that I answer right away, even though sometimes I do.
Me too.
But by the next morning, right, they're connected in and we're working through it live, kind of as it's coming up for them. So that's a really cool way of kind of getting some support at really accessible level. I also do mastermind groups and success pod groups. So that's, in collaboration with other women coming together, which I absolutely love. There's nothing like bringing, a group full of women, especially entrepreneurs, together, and the support and the sisterhood that they create, but with the support and coaching along the way to really make action in their business. And then, of course, one-to-one, like private coaching. Love that as well. And I try and create a cadence with my clients that it's pretty regular. So we're touching base at least once a week. So every other week we're doing a deep dive session, and on those alternating weeks we do a check-in. So whether that is a voice note or a quick text or a quick hop on 20-minute call to say like, hey, what's working, what's going on, but it really allows them to kind of create that momentum to keep things moving, because the last thing you want to do is run up against some sort of hurdle, resistance, and be like, okay, I'll just stop and I'll ask my coach when I see them in a month from now. Well, that's not really going to create any sort of sustainable action in your business. So my hope is to become like kind of a common piece of your business every week.
Yeah. And that also doesn't it doesn't leave your clients with the feeling that they're solving something when they need it. So that's such a smart way to conduct your business, right? Because if you are leaving it till the next month, what are the chances that it's slipping through the cracks? Or what if they find somebody else that was able to solve their problem?
And
right?
oftentimes it's
so
not
smart.
like, sometimes it's the technical and business stuff in terms of like, I don't know how to, or whatever the case. But sometimes it's like, hey, I have this really cool opportunity and I'm totally getting in my own way. I'm like sabotaging this, and I know I am, but I can't push through it. And, a conversation, and we push the boundaries a little bit, and we challenge with some care, obviously built in, but we're like, so what if this happened, and what would be the worst case scenario, whatever it is. But the idea is, you're right, we don't want to lose the opportunity because we're sitting there just kind of festering on our own.
Yeah, and we're also consuming content at such a high pace that, again, you get this, and this might be a problem that our generation and the next generation will have to deal with for a really long time, is we need instant results, we need instant answers, we need instant everything. Is that the best way? No. But I will tell you that even in my business, if you show up for people instantly, it is appreciated. While yes, you have to limit your
boundaries, yes,
boundaries, create boundaries. It's really nice to even just be like, hey, thanks for your message. I'm going to put something together for you in a day or two, right? And they're usually pretty understanding, but if they're just hanging around, anxious, that's when you tend to lose people, for sure.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways, especially as women, we allow ourselves to kind of play smaller, but we camouflage it with different ways, or like, oh, I just need to work on this, or it's not quite ready, or it's not quite perfect, or whatever. But it allows us, it gives us the excuse to kind of sit back a little bit and not go for things. So
yeah, no, for sure. So if somebody came to you, an entrepreneur, and they're struggling with this lovely concept of balance, how would you help them to find more happiness in their lives?
Happiness, it's a beautiful thing. For me, it's about, sharing with them my lived experience, coming from a place of like, oh, I totally messed this up the first time around. And then how did I fix it? And giving them the hope that there is a way of creating that, and helping them come up. And I think that that's the biggest problem, is that oftentimes we don't do either or intentionally. It just happens to us. So when we can sit back and say, well, what's working and what's not working right now, but what's the ideal situation? What does your life what does a day in its best version look like for you specifically? Okay, yeah, I would want to do this, and I have this, and this kind of income, and I want to work with these kinds of clients, but I also want to be able to finish at 3:30 and get my kid off the bus every day, like whatever that is. And it's different for every single person I work with. But
100%.
let's start with that picture
Yeah.
and then build
Yeah.
the business that supports that.
Yeah. I have a client who her perfect day starts out with a 5 a.m. workout. And I will tell you right now, that is not my perfect day. So
I
this is,
agree with you.
but she says, but that's when I get my zen, I get my
Good for
exercise, I
her.
get my endorphins, and then I
Yeah.
can sit down and have a cup of coffee. And I'm sitting there like, I would like to be sleeping at 5 a.m. still. That would
Right.
be my perfect day,
But we kind
right?
of also know what we need or what works well for us.
Yeah,
We just ignore it actually. And we're like, oh, right, I have to fit into this kind of textbook case study of what I've seen. And I'm like, hey, guess
yeah,
what? You actually don't. Questioning status quo was one of the most powerful things I did when I was in that low spot to break it. And be like, I'm not going to subscribe to this anymore. Thanks so
right,
much. Changed everything.
right.
Because I
Liberating,
also,
right?
yes, but when I would do that in my first business, I would have those moments of like, I'm going to kick off early and whatever. I would feel so much guilt.
Yes, yes.
Like
I did
I
that
would,
last week. I did that
right,
last
you may
week
as well
before I left.
be
Yeah,
working because you just feel so much guilt around it.
yeah,
Letting go of that by intentionally creating the business that serves your life changes that. It gets rid of the guilt every afternoon. Well, pretty much every afternoon. I mean, I live in Canada, so the snow and grossness, but every afternoon I get out and go for a long walk. And like I said, it fills me back up, makes me productive. Um, and I never feel guilty about it anymore. That stuff would have killed me in my first business.
yeah. I'm still struggling with that. I had to bring up this concept to a group of peers that I was speaking to, and I was saying I just feel really guilty that I'm now going to the States for 2 days. It wasn't really, it was like a day and a half of the actual work week. It wasn't even that long. But I said, oh, but I was away in February and I'm going to be in Vancouver in June. And they just stopped me and were like, but why? Right? Like, why are you feeling guilty? And somebody made a good point and they said, it's because somebody probably told you that or somebody asked you and it's true. Then it came back to me, somebody asked me in a way of, oh, you're going away again, right? Instead of phrasing it as, oh great, you've got some time off, let
Right.
me put that in my calendar, it was a, oh, you're going away again, right? And
Yeah.
that stuck with me, and it just shows you how powerful our
Yes.
interactions are and our words,
Yes. Somehow we redefined like being successful in business, meaning you're so tied to the business that it can't survive without you and you need to be there. I would pose the opposite. A truly successful business means it's fueling this life that I want to live and that you get to do the things you want. And it doesn't mean that things aren't happening. You're just using smart business systems and you have a smart team in place that can do things, but I never want to see anyone I work with never take a vacation, never take a
Yeah.
day or even an afternoon off because they feel like they can't. I don't think that that's successful. That's just a recipe for like full burnout.
My entire business model is based on, let me offload some of that
Right.
from you, right? Like that's my entire business, is let me help you so that you're
Right.
not, buried under all of that.
Yeah.
And it's because of hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
You're
A
always
100%.
hustling.
Yeah.
And you're like, but why? Why are we always
Yeah.
hustling for the same results
Yeah.
when we're not getting any further? We're
Right.
just becoming more and more tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often encourage my clients to think about like, what is the currency in your business and how do you use it? So, for instance, I can have a client tell me like, I really love to do social media. I love it, but I don't have time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then this weekend, I really have to, I don't know, clean my house or clean my bathrooms in my house. And I hate doing that job. And I'm like, well, what if we hired someone to clean the bathrooms to open up the time for you to do the social media? And they're like, oh, right, time is currency,
Right.
and put yourself in the space for your greatest success. Delegate and elevate, right? That's the idea. And it's we just, again, we need to rethink it. Money spent is money spent, whether you're outsourcing social media or outsourcing some cleaning to free up time and get things
Yeah.
done. It's the same thing.
Except it's less valuable, I would argue, because money flows in and out, but time only flows one way. You're never getting your time back.
Yes.
You're never getting it back. So is it really that $100 that you're holding on to for a cleaning, for some help
Right.
cleaning? I was just having this conversation with Brad, my partner, and it drives me nuts that I can relate so much to this. But we finally came to an agreement. But yes, it's like, but that $100, I promise you, will not be saved. It will be spent anyway.
Right.
So why
Yeah.
not make it, you know,
Yes.
productive? Or there's, you know, there are other cultures around the world who receive help regularly. They have somebody who
Yeah.
helps them with you know, groceries and
Yeah.
cooking and cleaning, and it's okay because they are out there making money and providing for their families.
Yes.
So why are we so different?
I
You
don't
know,
know. And we're all very guilty of it. I think especially as women to ask for help. Like we feel like if we ask for help, we're less than or not as good as. We do that comparison game. It's really just not
yeah.
effective. It doesn't help anybody.
I have a feeling, this is a personal theory, it's because everybody calls women superheroes.
Mhm.
And while I appreciate the gesture and the credit that they're trying to give
Right.
moms specifically, or women, or you know, usually they're caretakers, even if they're not moms,
Sure.
it dehumanizes them in the sense that they somehow have more time, more energy, more resources to spend on other people doing
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
things. When in reality, we don't. We just shove our own needs to the side, right?
Yeah.
And again, not everybody's the same. Sometimes dads do the exact same thing, or
Sure.
males, you know, it's a reoccurring pattern when they're like, oh, moms are superheroes. Yes, in a lot of ways, but please don't forget that they're also human and they need things. They need
First
things.
and foremost, they are human. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's just wild what's happening. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was like when I redesigned, I said I reverse engineered it. I was like, I am done with spending my whole weekend cleaning the house, doing the groceries, planning the meals, like, because that wasn't a break.
No.
That
No.
wasn't like that, it wasn't healthy. So, yes, by
No.
taking the Mondays, I'm like, I have this time allocated to it. That means I get to enjoy family time on the weekends without any guilt that house stuff isn't getting done. Monday, I get all of those other chores done. And then Tuesday through Friday, focused in on clients and building my business. It is, again, it's not about balance. It's just about putting the puzzle pieces in the right sequence that makes sense for me.
And I'm sure you do a lot of this with your own clients where you help them figure out what works for them and what their
Oh, yeah.
ideal schedule should work. And there's a lot of research out there that favors time blocking, right? Time
Yes.
blocking, you know, what what you're working on when prioritizing, and it sounds to me like you've got it nailed into your own, which is it's the hardest part because you can give so much great advice, but sometimes it's so hard to follow your own, right?
Totally. Right. And sometimes, like, intellectually, we know that we need to do something. And I run into this with a lot of clients that they're like, yeah, I know I need to do that. And then they just don't, they can't. And I'm like, okay, we need to like break this down of what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, I know I need to do promotion. I know I need to do marketing, but I'm not. Or I know I need to time block to be effective because I'm drowning otherwise. And why am I not doing it? They will say that. Why am I not doing this? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but we have to figure that out.
Yeah. And you know, for just so that the listeners can understand a little bit more of the experience that I've had with you, I've had conversations with Jenn where, um, Jenn, where I've I'm telling you about what's going on, and you're sitting there like, but why? And it just never occurs to you that it could be different. So Jenn was
Yeah.
kind of like my sounding board for those conversations, right? And she's like, well, why can't you just do this? And I have to say that at one point, I don't think I took your advice on something, not because I didn't want to, but because I was too scared, right? It was fear. And now, months later, I'm finally taking that advice and it's working out so great for me. I was
Beautiful.
having like bursts of happiness, right? Of like, oh man, I should have done this earlier, right? It was to do with, um, when we talked about, I think one of our very first conversations about hourly rates
Mm,
versus like a more of on a flat fee or more of like a package basis, right? And I've started doing that more because it made more sense for the clients that I've been with the longest too.
sure.
And I'm just like, man, I should have done that earlier. But that was on your pollinators platform.
Yeah, and it's a scary conversation. It's really a common conversation. Pricing is hard for women
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
because so many of us struggle with distinguishing the difference between the price of our service and our own worth. And if
Value.
it's
Yeah.
hourly, we can feel like, well, it's just that's just a tiny number. And I can say that tiny number, but if I say a flat fee for the month instead of an hour, that number's too big. And then I feel uncomfortable saying it. So I'm just going to shrink back. I'm either going to lower the price or not do it at all. And then, like, yeah, and it has to do with
Yeah.
our worth and not understanding the value or not,
Yeah.
yeah, not appreciating the value that we deliver for our clients.
Yeah. And this is totally a topic for next time, but there is such a thing as having prices that are so low that you're
They work
not being
against you.
taken seriously
100%.
and you're still wondering why you're not busy. Oh, that's such a big topic that we could cover like
Oh,
10
yeah.
episodes
It's a
on.
big
But
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So we've got about 10 minutes now. I want you to tell us again, maybe let us know where we can contact you, what sort of offers you've got going on,
Yeah.
and if we have a couple of minutes after, maybe tell us what you like to do to relax, or what are
Oh
the
my
fun things you like to do.
I've gotten better at that over the last few years. Okay, so I am Jenn, Honeyflow Coaching, and you can find me on all the social media platforms. My handle is at Honeyflow Coaching, so that's Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, I believe. And as I mentioned earlier, I also love email. So if a question's popped up for you today, as we've been chatting, that you're like, oh, I never thought about that, or I'm struggling with this, feel free to send me an email. Absolutely, I will get back to you. My email address is Jenn with 2 N's at honeyflowcoaching.com. And the other part of your question was around offers, right? Is that what you were saying? What am
Yeah,
I
yeah. Let
currently
us know
offering?
what offers you have. Yeah,
So I can tell you that as we talked about earlier in the show, kind of those different access points in terms of pocket coaching, groups that I actually have 2 wonderful women out there looking to form a new pod. So if that's something in community that you feel would be take your business to the next level, a mastermind pod is being formed right now, which is exciting. I always love to do that. I'm actually working on a new program. I haven't even launched yet. I'm totally in the works of figuring that out, but I want to do a 6-week kind of intensive on creating the building block foundational pieces for your business. So that includes like values, a working or a living business plan, onboarding, standard operating procedures, all of those things that I definitely did not do early enough in my first business. And then by the time we're like, oh, it's really busy, we have lots of clients, shoot, now we're like flying by the seat of our pants and that's not working. So as I said, I'm right in the beginning stages of kind of mapping that out and hope to launch it in the next couple of weeks. So if that appeals to you, throw me an email because I would love to get your feedback on what would make that great. But yeah, I'm thinking a 6-week kind of weekly intensive with an online community for support, but building out by the end of this course, you will walk away with like all of those main foundational pieces in your toolbox and ready to go.
yeah. That sounds like something that would go wonderful with the CRM where you could plug all of that knowledge in. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, we've got a couple minutes here more, guys. Thank you so much again, Jenn, for coming in. I feel like we've had such a productive conversation. And thanks again for being our first guest here on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, you had a question about what I do for relaxation, right?
Yes. I was just going to say, now tell me something fun, the fun things you do.
Yeah, so again, this has nothing to do with me, but it kind of is, in that both my boys play competitive baseball. So we are definitely a baseball family. We spend pretty much, I think I have this coming weekend free, and then I won't have a moment of free time basically until September. But I enjoy it. I love being outside. I love being with, the family and friends that you kind of create in that community. That makes me really happy. Also, I just love being by water. I love being, by water, lounging, boating, any of those sorts of things. That brings me a lot of joy. And really, my happiest place, I think, is with friends, when we are just no expectation, full of laughs, and like just connecting with each other. That's my happy spot for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm super social as well. I could totally relate to that. I always want to be with friends. And by water, I mean, who doesn't like that?
Yeah,
I feel like it's a biological response.
Yes, I am a summer person. And so to see spring finally coming around here in Ontario, I'm like, oh, it's about time. I always kid, I'm like, as soon as my kids kind of fly the nest, like my house is going somewhere warmer. I can tell you that.
That's awesome. We've had really good weather for the last maybe like 5 days, and now it's back to rain.
Yeah.
So
Yay.
It's almost trailer time for us. Oh, we just got a last minute comment here from Carton. American woman talk. Oh, all right. So maybe this is some criticism. That's fine. That's fine. We can handle some criticism here. Guys, if you have any constructive criticism, we're totally here and open for it. And yeah, just to have some sort of, I guess, a precursor to all of this. We're obviously speaking from our own experiences. Everybody has different experiences, so please don't take offense to anything. We welcome conversation. This is why this is a platform to discuss these things. So if it's a topic that you don't like, no problem. Maybe scroll on by, or actually put in a topic that you would like to hear about, and we might just be able to do that, guys. So we're just going to say thank you so much again, Jenn. Thank you to everybody who had such wonderful comments and contributions. It's so nice to see people from everywhere tuning in: Los Angeles, India, Canada, New Orleans, everywhere here. Yeah, it was super fun. And thank you again for the network for allowing me to have this platform. Thanks for everybody for tuning in to the show. Again, big thank you to the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network. And join us next week for another exciting episode. And if you guys would like to be a guest on the show and you have a business, please give me a quick shout out at info@ontarioassistant.com. Otherwise, you can always find me on www.ontarioassistant.com, and you will be able to find Jenn at all the links that we've posted into the summary here of the episode. This will be available on all major platforms, and I don't know what your favorite platform is, but you are able to save these episodes to listen in later, maybe in the car, or that's what I have a huge list that I can't keep up with. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks.